This week I was supposed to do a full robust Q&A where I was answering some of my most frequently asked questions about leadership and about moving your career in the direction that you want it to go. The challenge is I got a lot of questions, and so many of them centered around this one very specific topic. So that is the one we're going to speak to today. Now, if you want to hear about more situations, if you have more questions that you want my specific advice on or things that you want to hear about, then let's do a live Q&A. So if you want that, I want you to put it in the comments that you would want to be part of a live Q&A on this topic so that you can get all of your leadership, career, and career advancement questions answered right here live. Now, the questions that I got so frequently were things around politics, things around playing the game, things around the ticky-tacky pieces that people feel like they just don't understand when it comes to the office. So I got a couple that were not even questions. They were just statements like, I hate office politics. I wish I didn't have to deal with office politics, right? How do I get around these things? I just want to go home after I do my job, right? I just want to do the work, do it really well, and then leave it at the door. But it just doesn't seem like that's enough anymore, right? People want to know if it is required to, quote, play the game to get to a senior leadership level, whether that means director to you, whether that means executive level to you. People are wondering if they have to do that in order to get to that level. And I want to explain the answer first with a little bit of a story. So I have a 13-year-old. I have three boys, but one of them is 13 years old. And when he was 3, I instituted a rule. Now, it was a rule that I did not tell him about. It was one that just sort of lived in my brain. But it was basically, if you, 3-year-old, outsmart mommy, then you win. If you cannot outsmart mommy, then you win, right? So what did that look like? You know those things that your kids ask you to do that you really have no interest in doing? It's not because it's bad. It's not because it's going to cause any sort of problem. It just is exhausting because you know everything that goes into it and they just don't, right? So he would ask to go sledding when we had to be somewhere in an hour. Could we go sledding in that amount of time? Sure. But we had to put on the snowsuit. We had to put on the boots. We had to dig out the sled. We had to do the sledding. Then we had to come back in, put the sled away, get all the stuff off, change, probably get a snack, go do the thing that we needed to do. Could I make it work in the hour before we had to leave? Yes. Did it sound like an enjoyable time that was worth doing it? No. Also, he would want to, a lot of it had to do with going outside, which if you have multiple kids and the oldest is a toddler, you know, right? You know how much work that is to just go out and do the thing and to time everything out appropriately. So he would ask to, go outside and ride his tractor. Okay, well, I got to get your little baby brother either down for a nap before we do that, or I have to figure out how to cart him around and watch you on this tractor because, again, hello, he's like 3 years old at this point. So instead of saying no all of the time, I decided that I would just follow this rule, right? So I would say things like, sure, if you can get your snow clothes on, then we can go out and go sledding. If you can get your shoes on, tie your shoes, and get your tractor out, then sure, I will get the baby ready. And if you can do that before I can get him ready, then we will go out and ride your tractor. So, because I was expecting him to fail, because I was expecting him to not put that effort in, that was sort of the outsmart mommy piece of it, right? If you can do this, then I will do what you want me to do, right? So I was rewarding the effort. He would get those little shoes on and he would go find his tractor and he would push it out into the driveway and he would go, okay, I'm ready. You said. And I would go out and supervise whatever it is that he wanted to do, right? Now that he's older, the rule is similar, but it has a little bit different circumstance around it. So now the rule, and I do say this one out loud, is with every privilege comes responsibility, right? Privilege and responsibility, they run together. So if you think that you are big enough to go to the haunted house alone with your buddies, or you think that you are big enough to run around the fair for the evening without mom and dad following you around, then show me that you are responsible enough to handle that challenge. So what would that look like? That would be the part that I said, right? You show me that you're responsible enough to handle this. And he would then set up the plans. He would figure out the pickups and drop offs. He would figure out who he was going to spend time with. Remember that one, because that one's pretty important. He would think about, how he was going to pay for the evening, how much money he actually needed. Did he need to ask me for money, or did he have money of his own that he could bring along? Right? He would come up with all of the logistics and do that mental heavy lifting, so then he could sort of present it to me and I could decide yes or no. Now, what that means is my kids are going to do things at different times, right? I have 3 boys, like I said, but are they all going to go to the fair by themselves at 13? Probably not, right? Some of them, one of them maybe, is going to still be 15 when he's at the fair and still have mom and dad kind of hanging around in the background just to make sure everything's going well. Or maybe one of them will be younger and I'll say, hey, you know what? At 11 years old, you are ready for this and this is going to go just fine. But it's that level of expectation that creates the difference. And it's my relationship with those boys that allows them to sort of figure out what I need to be able to allow them to go. So it's no longer about who can get their shoes on the fastest. It's no longer about, can I actually put in the effort to put my snowsuit on or to find my tractor to go do the thing? Because at that level, if that's what you're working on, you do still need the supervision. You do still need the plan from the adult in the room, from the person who's calling the shots, if that is what you're focused on. So if you are thinking that you just want to put your head down and do the work that you know how to do, then as much as this is going to hurt to say it, you're still at that snowsuit level. You're still at the get the tractor out of the garage level. If you want to move into that senior leadership role, if you want to be at that executive level or at that director level, then you need to do what I'm asking these kiddos to do. You need to understand that that privilege runs with responsibility. And you need to understand the relationship enough to be able to figure out how to create the plan. So what looks like favoritism, because that's what people are really saying, right? When you say, I don't like office politics, I don't want to play the game, you mean you don't want to be a brown noser. You mean that you don't want to just develop these fake relationships that don't mean anything just so that you can get the opportunities that you want. And if that's what it was, hey, I would be wholeheartedly with you. I don't want to do any of that either. And, newsflash, nobody wants that. Nobody wants a brown noser. Nobody wants to have someone who's pretending to be in relationship with them just so that they can get an opportunity out of it. Nobody wants that at all. But if you develop the relationship with someone to the point that you know what they need to feel comfortable, that's when you get those bigger opportunities, right? So think of the team that you're managing right now. Everybody on that team has a different skill level. Everybody on that team has a different level of independence. And the person who is the standout all-star probably gets a little bit different level of independence, right? A little bit different level of leeway from you. You're giving them more opportunities to either act as your proxy or head up projects that they're coming up with, because they have the skill to do it and because they are speaking to you in a way that speaks to you, in a way that speaks to all of your values and goals. So when, they come up to you, and not little Johnny, we're talking about employees, not kids. When Johnny comes up to you and says, hey, I have this great idea for a new marketing plan. It's going to take about this much of a budget, but I think that we can get it up and off the ground in 6 months, and we'll know right away if it's going to, yield a good result or if we should scrap it and move on to the next thing. We could be in, this type of better place with this level of new leads by Christmas time. Those things potentially speak directly to you as the boss and what you need. And so, whether or not you need to make changes to that, you're more likely to give Johnny a yes, just like I'm more likely to give my 13-year-old a yes, even if he missed out on one critical piece of the plan, because I can direct him in a new direction. But he came up with a plan that was important to me. Your person, Johnny, for you, came up with the plan that spoke to the things that are most important to you. And so, even if you need to redirect him a little bit, even if you say, well, Christmas time is not the time to be figuring out whether we need new leads, you're more likely to have the next thing out of your mouth say, let's budget for it this year so that in February you can start and we can be up and running 6 months from then, right? It's not about the brown nosing. It's not about the fake relationship. It's about the real relationship and what kind of vantage point that gives your employee. Now, if you have that sort of bottom of the barrel employee on your team, and even if you have a great team, we all know who is kind of the top and who's struggling at the bottom, right? If they came to you and said, well, that's not fair. You never asked me for my marketing plan. You're probably like, yeah, I didn't. And I didn't ask him either. He came up with it. He brought it to me. He proposed it to me in a way that was important to me. Maybe you wouldn't have all of those words, but you would know intrinsically that that is why. That's what made the difference. And that's the same thing that's happening at that senior leader level. That's the same thing that's happening with those execs. Maybe some of them are brown nosing, and I will tell you that is a fire that will burn out so quickly because, again, nobody wants that. And it's not going to give them good ideas. But what they do want is that strong relationship where people are actually building into what they, as the leader of the organization, want. And so if you do want to get to that level in your organization, if you do want to have the opportunities or the scope of work that comes along with being a director, with being an assistant VP, with being a senior VP, then those are the type of things that you're going to have to understand and take steps forwards in. Because it's no longer about putting your shoes on. It's no longer about just doing the work really, really well or leading a team that does the work really, really well. That's why I say that excellence just gets you more of where you're at. You need to be listening. You need to have your head up, right? We're not keeping our head down doing the work. We're not doing that anymore. If you are the person who wants to go to that next level, pick your chin up. Look around at what the needs are and what your boss or your boss's boss actually wants to achieve so that you can speak directly to those needs in a way that speaks to them. And if you're listening to all of this and thinking, okay, I'm in, I've taken some notes, I can do that. I just don't know what's important to them. That is exactly what we dig into within the first month of coaching. That is where you will actually dissect what is important to them and how you can help them achieve it. I had one client just this past week say that she had to drive instead of flying from a site visit that she had. And she had a very long drive, obviously, because she was going to fly. And she used an hour of that drive to just turn off the radio and think through exactly what was important, to reflect back on what she saw using the tools that I had given her in coaching so that she could really dissect what those true values were for her boss. And what came out of that was her ability to speak directly to what is most important to him and persuade him, influence him down the line that she needed him to go. If you want to have that control that power, that empowerment from your boss to lead up, then click the link below so that we can see what is possible for you in a coaching relationship.